I think that, hey, when you're approaching 60, you probably got another 25 years left and making them the best I've ever had, mate.
Yeah, good on you. I think it's important. I think, we get more inputs in our brains today than our grandparents had in a lifetime. So you need to find that time to clear it and give it a break. Very important.
And I remember watching you on the ads and that, and you love doing that you're a busy person. I'm a busy person as well. I like relaxing by actually doing things. And I think that once you accept that about yourself, that's just a huge step forward as well.
Yeah, I think knowing, for me, I've got what I call a monkey brain. Call it Bob the monkey. And for me, I'm an active relaxer. So if I can read or play the guitar poorly, or cook, then it's like putting my mind in a washing machine. I think those things are important for everyone to understand what you need to do every day to switch off and refresh.
Just a quick question on that, mate. So I think a lot of people probably make the mistake that when you are public about having mental health issues of any kind, that once you've done that and you've been outed, that all of a sudden there's this miracle cure or magic cure and, hey, I'm better now. But, one thing that I've always struggled with, and my dear mate Mike King always tells me, mate, we've got this for the rest of our lives. We've got to learn how to deal with it, accept it, and actually get on with it. But you can't just sort of flick a switch and it goes away.
Yeah, look, I think they're really important things to understand. And I think there's anxiety, stress and pressure that make you mentally unwell, burnout. There's a whole lot of different things that can get you to that place. I think the most important thing to realise is that, if you've got a mental health issue, then you've got to manage it every day. And I think there's what I call preventative mental health. So, I had anxiety and I was clinically depressed. You can actually, get through that. And I went from surviving to thriving. But I have a daily mental health plan, and I call that my preventative mental health plan. And I think, if you work on a daily basis around your mental health, like you do all the other aspects of your life, you go into work, you spend 8 hours, you might go for a walk for your physical health. You've also got to nowadays have a daily mental health plan, and I think that's important for everyone. And then if you have been diagnosed with something, then it's really important to understand what that is and act accordingly. So yeah, Mike King's right. It's something you just got to work on every single day, but it shouldn't be a negative either. It should just be part of what you do to stay well.
John, I remember watching those test matches in 1990. I was in New Plymouth. I can recall it clearly, sitting there in a flat. It was a daytime test against France, and JK dropped the ball when it was past him, and I just remember just reacting at the TV, going, what the hell? He never does this. And it always pains me now. I keep thinking, God, if only we'd all known what the hell was happening with you at the time. But I suppose did you know what was happening with you at the time? But to have it manifest on the field like that, it was just incredible.
Yeah, no, I didn't know what was happening. I had no awareness of what was going on, so I was having a prolonged anxiety attack that day. It started when I woke up, and I just wanted to run off the field, and I dropped the ball just because I just was not present. I was somewhere else, and so that was a pretty scary time for me, But once I understood it, once I knew I could take control and get control back, that was a sort of turning point in my life. I sort of accepted it and then said, right, I'm going to work on this. And getting back to how we started the conversation, just make sure you've got a daily mental health plan that's personalised to you.
I've got so much respect for you, mate. Let's talk about some rugby things. Can I start with? I was watching you on the breakdown.
My passion.
I was watching you on the breakdown, and there was such a genius idea to sit you in front of the telly and put up the rules and scenarios and ask you to explain them and what you'd do as a referee. And look, I had so many people call me afterwards, comment afterwards, text me, message me, and going, "Wow, JK!" And it's not like you don't know; it's like the rest of us don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think, do you know how many rules there are in football?
In the round ball football, yes, stuff all, mate, about 10, I think.
Yeah, I think there's 9 or 10 and then some variations on that, right?
Yeah.
Rugby, we've got 125, so, we shouldn't be adding rules, we should take them out, and you've got to take your hat off to the referees. I've got massive respect for them. But you imagine, a bunch of guys hitting a ruck at 100 miles an hour that have been in the gym all week, and you've got 18 simultaneous rules that you can ref on, So we just need to simplify our game as much as we can. And if we can do that, then everyone can sort of understand it, right? And I always remember talking to a guy called Albert Sarras, right? He's passed now, but he was a very, very influential Frenchman. He was president at the time, and he said to me, Jackie, the problem with our game is interpretation. We should just do the law, which I thought was really interesting, right? So I think what Goldie and I did the other day is, A, we annoyed each other straight away because it's about interpretation.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's about interpretation. So a ref has to interpret how he's going to ref the game, and it's not his fault. And I think, for me, learning all those rules, and then before, rule number 1, 4, 6, and then Article A, B, C, and D, it gets really complicated, and you can't blame the refs for that. It's something the game needs to address.
Do you think this needs to come down as a directive up on high as well, to take the pressure off the actual individuals and go, listen, you are there, you're feeling the game, and it's like football. And I noticed a couple of incidents on the weekend where they've removed the VAR and said the refs the game on the field. Unless it's an absolute howler of an error, we're going to let that referee decide, because he's in the right place and the best place to actually. And I think there are some referees who, we call it letting the game flow or whatever, but just have a feel for it. That means that you might give a little bit here, you might take a little bit there. It may not be all within the exact context of the rule book, but it makes the game look a hell of a lot better to watch.
I don't actually agree with you, mate. I think that I understand what you're saying, but I don't agree with it.
Okay.
I think we need to use technology as much as possible, but the people using the technology need to move fast. I mean, the NRL, it's done and dusted in like 20 seconds now, because there's too much riding on the game not to use the technology. I think the second point you made, I always talk about Ben O'Keefe, who I think is one of our best referees, refed his style, did what he wanted to do, and then a couple of years ago, I don't know what happened, but he was trying to ref to the rules and not bring his personality, and I think he had a really average year, but now he's back to being the best. So with so many rules, I reckon we need to make the refs superstars as well. Because I would rather go to a game and know what the ref's going to ref. If you've got 18 rules at the breakdown, right, and, for example, you're not going to be that stringent on letting someone come in from the side as long as it's not too blatant, as long as you carry on with that, the players will adjust.
Right?
But the thing that players and the crowd hates is when you haven't picked up a coming in from the side for 70 minutes and then you pick it up, with the last 5 minutes. Now, to be fair, the biggest blatant one was probably, that time issue, Aussie New Zealand last year against, remember in Melbourne?
Yeah, Foley. Was it Foley didn't kick it out? Yeah, I think it was Foley, yeah. Mm.
Yeah. Now, that is within the letter of the law, but I've never seen it enforced. So that's why you get people walking away from that game frustrated, and it's not the ref's fault. We just need to try and simplify it as much as possible, let the refs bring their personality, embrace their personality so that we know how they ref, and then everyone will adjust, and then you'll get more flow.
So JK is with us. When the questions that you ask, I thought Andrew Hall was a fantastic interview as well, and you can feel his frustration as well, can't you? Because he's a guy in charge of what is supposedly a commercial entity, a business, an enterprise, and yet he can't make the decisions he wants to make because there's an overriding arching body that does control things. How much better would it be, the competition or the game or just Super Rugby as a whole, if we allowed our franchises to have that much more freedom? Then we could do things perhaps where we could have transfers in between. You could have an All Black playing for the Waratahs or whatever. All of that.
Yeah, look, I think that's a multi-complex question, mate, and I'll try and answer it. So I think that what you're saying is correct. I think we need to get independence from the governing body from a commercial point of view, not from a regulatory point of view. I think we should still be under the NZR. But what I'm talking about is creating a competition, let's call it the Steinlager Cup, the Heineken Cup, UEFA Cup in football, where so we create a new competition. We let's just use the 60 million as we sell it for $60 million or $50 million or $40 million, and the Super Rugby side split that amongst themselves. They then become standalone. They now, and this has already started, by the way, the rugby union said go and find your own sponsors. So they start building a franchise that they can sell. They can start being attractive for overseas investment, but they can actually start making money. Now, the second part of that is if I've got a salary cap, I might decide to keep Road and Barrett here, right? And and pay him what he would get to go to Japan. That's my prerogative, and that would be outside his All Black contract. I think the NZR is aware of those things. You need to put a few other things in place, like, I believe, and this is my thoughts alone, we need to bring Japan into it. It needs to be Australia, Pacifica, and Japan, because Japan will be where the money is.
Yeah.
It's easy throwing these figures out, but you've actually got to have a competition that's sustainable and that people want to watch.
In terms of the Pacific Islands teams, and I know that New Zealand Rugby are investing into women's rugby, when you talk about it in a business sense, when you talk about investment, that means you want a return on investment. I think it's the wrong word to probably choose, because there's a lot of benevolence attached to this. Do you believe the same kind of benevolence needs to be given to, say, that Moana Pacifica side? Because playing in Apia, playing in Tonga, surely is what the competition needs as well. This is just my opinion, of course, but I think if you're going to have, a truly country competition, you want, the home and away is playing over their places, playing up in Japan, is playing in Australia, and it's not playing just specifically at Mount Smart and assuming that side then is going to attract all the people that live in Auckland. It's just, there's something not quite gelling there for me.
Yeah, I'm probably in your camp, mate. I believe in Moana Pacifica. I think they should carry on. I believe in the Fiji Drua. So I believe in those things, and we need to make sure we support them and keep them going. I think the Fijian Drua idea is better than the Moana Pacifica one at the moment. I think them playing at home makes it harder for the opposition. It brings money into the economy. I mean, there'd be probably 25, 30 people from Sky that fly up there. There's people coming and spending money in the hotel. So you put money into the local economy. So I think that's really, really important. I think we have to, for what Pacifica does for World Rugby, I think it's a combination of making sure that NZR supports it, but also World Rugby supports the growth of that. Our goal from Asia and Pacific should be, Samoa, Fiji and Tonga being in the top 8 consistently through the Super Rugby competition. I don't think being in South Auckland is the right answer. It's very interesting when you think about the Samoan Sevens team, they are locally picked boys, and that gives them an opportunity and an exposure at the next level. And they've had a fantastic season, So for me, it's it's carry on supporting them as much as we can, and that might be financially. But the second thing is I think they should be based, in Apia and Nuku'alofa, and as the Fijians are, they sort of got a combination. I think they're based on the Gold Coast and back in Fiji.
Yeah.
So the economy goes back to them,
Yeah, and also I just wonder then, whether you start sort of getting creative and thinking, okay, how can we get some kind of just little tourist packages for 500 fans to go over there? You get a couple of games, you get one in Fiji, you get one in Samoa or something like that, and then actually you get, the chance to actually get another few hundred people in the gate spending money as well. There's got to be, all of these things, like, I don't know, I just kind of think, some good brains just need to sit down and think about this. A couple more things and we'll let you go. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, no, mate, no, you'll be happy to hear that actually the NZR is moving down this path. I've had the conversations we're having now with Mark Robinson. He's aware, and we're moving probably faster than World Rugby. So we're trying our best to be the innovators. I think the new rules are great. And I think, Mark Robinson particularly, when I last sat with him, he's aware of these issues and is working away. It's a bit more complex. And one of our challenges, with rugby is we move a lot slower than other sports because we still have an amateur, sort of structure.
Yeah.
Whereas look at the NRL, they change their rules, and if they don't like it halfway through the season, they rechange it. But that's just 3 guys sitting in a room probably,
yeah.
Whereas we've got to go to the IRB. So it's a bit more complex, but I'm really confident that the NZR are actually aware of some of these issues and are working as hard as they can to get some change, which makes me really confident in the game moving forward.
Look, I criticise New Zealand Rugby when they do things that upset me because I care about the game so much. But there are times, like I thought last week, where they needed to stand up and front foot themselves. And the criticism copped by appointing those 3 men who are all fantastic coaches to the Black Ferns was just ridiculous in my mind. The media trying to angle it into some kind of sexist affront because they weren't women. In times like that, I think New Zealand Rugby have got to actually stand up for themselves and say, hey, listen, we're running a business here. What our business is derived from success. We've got to be successful, the best people for the right jobs, and not cop that stuff. Because, that to me destroyed a day, which should have been a day of celebration for those 3 coaches and the Black Ferns.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and I think they would have consulted the senior leadership group within the women's team. The Sarah Henene is an amazing leader in her own right, and I'm sure they were consulted. There is a plan to make sure we get more females into the coaching staff, but the best thing for the Black Ferns right now is that. So I agree with you. I think it's really, really important that we don't, we look a bit more at the detail and the reasons why, because I certainly asked the same questions, but they explained it to me correctly. We need to make sure we don't expose someone too early, because it's also a pretty cutthroat business. You put people out of their comfort zones, they will get the sack. They start losing. No one will remember who you are or what gender you are. You either win or you don't. So I think the plan is a good one. The coaches that they've chosen are good ones, and I'm pretty sure that the senior leadership group and the Black Ferns would have been consulted.
All right, just on Rico before we go, I thought great news as well that he's signed, and it signals that it sends with Tukiaho signing as well, means that the black jersey does means as much as it always has. New Zealand Rugby say they can't compete financially with, of course, some of the offers overseas, but that black jersey does retain. The only confusion I had in there is that, so they consult Scott Robertson about Rico's appointment. I wonder if they consulted Ian Foster, and does it mean that with him signing for 4 years, does that put pressure on Fozzie to actually select him, and what say he didn't want to select him?
Well, first questions first, incredibly proud of Rico, incredibly proud of the sacrifice he's made, but also incredibly proud of the reasons for staying. He spoke about something that's incredibly important for me, and I know a lot of the modern players need to look after their families and do the right things for their whānau, and I totally accept that. But the All Blacks is a family, and we do have some challenges around our legacy. So to have someone like Rico actually say, I'm staying for the legacy, and I've still got some shit to achieve. You know?
Brilliant.
Which is really, really neat. Great for the Blues, great for the, great for the black jersey. Look, I'm pretty sure that Fozzie would have been consulted, and I'm pretty sure that as we're transitioning into this new era, then also, Razor would have been. But it's easy. Like, you probably didn't need to notify them either. It's actually the fringe guys that will miss out that will be the biggest ones. And I keep going back to Ngani Laumape. They're the guys that will need both coaches to have an opinion on, because when we say we can't keep everybody, Rico's an easy decision, and I'm pleased he's made it, right? Because he's the best centre in the world and we want to keep him. But what about some of the fringe guys where you have to make a decision whether you're going to keep them or not? So I think those decisions are really, really important moving forward, and you need to consult both, not from an emotional point of view, from a technical point of view, right? And they, regardless of what's happening, they need to put those aside for the greater good of the game and say, look, we think these three guys are on the fringe we need to try and keep.
Anyone taking out the Chiefs?
Pardon? Anyone going to take out the Chiefs?
Yeah.
We're just waiting. The Blues are just waiting, mate,
for
the finals.
Oh, waiting for the finals. Right, okay.
Yeah.
So those...
It's part of the plan, mate,
Always a pleasure talking to you, mate. Thank you so much for spending so much time with us.
You're welcome, mate. Always good to chat.